Hi, this is Emily Leiphart from Art from the Heart, and in this video I'm sharing a Paper Smooches card inspired by children's sleepwear sold at Gymboree. As soon as I saw these PJs, I knew exactly which Paper Smooches sets were going to be featured. I used the rolling pin from Kitschy Kitchen and Kitchen Icons, the gingerbread man from Giddy Gumdrops and Gumdrops Icons, the Santa hat from Merry Motifs and Merry Motifs Icons, and the sentiment, "It is what it is, roll with it," from Calorie Free. I started by stamping the images on their respective die cuts using Memento Tuxedo black ink. Then I colored them in with Copic markers. Just like on the pajama top, I used two different browns for the rolling pin and the gingerbread man. I shade the gingerbread man lightly at first, but then add more shading afterwards when I realize that the hat covers the shadowing from the first attempt. The Santa hat is pretty straightforward, and as usual, I always use light gray to shade in white areas to keep them from looking too flat. After all the coloring is done, I arrange the pieces just like in the inspiration photo and go about choosing pattern papers for the card base. I'm inspired by the stripes on the gingerbread man's hat and also the coordinating pajama pants. I'm going to use some papers from the Jubilee Wildberry paper pad by My Mind's Eye. I quickly rule out the red stripe since the shade of red clashes with the Santa hat. I like the contrast of the distressed mint against the black and white patterns. It also allows the Santa hat to stand out. I decide on horizontal black and white stripes in the background with the distressed mint as the immediate backdrop for the images. That way when I stamp the sentiment, it's also legible. I trim the papers and adhere the stripes to the card base, which is 4 inches by 5.5 inches. Then I arrange all the pieces, plus the sentiment stamp to gauge positioning. I felt that the scene needed a couple more elements, so I added mint enamel dot buttons to the gingerbread man and stamped a second rolling pin to stack in the background. The size of the rolling pin on the pajamas is much greater than the one on my card, at least relative to the gingerbread man. By stamping a second one, I can create the illusion of a larger one, either by attaching them together behind the gingerbread man or stacking them. At this point, I wasn't really sure how everything would come together. I play around with them a bit, and while I thought about it, I adhered the Santa hat to the gingerbread man and applied foam tape to the back for later. At this point, I was still frustrated with the positioning of the rolling pins, so I focused on creating the shadows beneath them. I used the shadow stamp set a lot and couldn't live without it. While I was choosing this shadow, I decided that I wanted a one-line sentiment as opposed to a stacked one, so I'm going to cut the stamp apart between the lines. Some sentiments are easy to mask off, but I needed to know the exact width of the full sentiment to stamp this one properly. The way I trim stamps so that they go back into their original positions is to cut them with some jagged lines. That way it's obvious how they fit together. If you cut them apart in a perfectly straight line, there's no way to know that. I always have the bottom of the stamp facing me when I cut. That means the stamping surface faces me. I hold the stamp so that it bends outward and I see in between the words. That way I'm confident I won't be cutting into the words. I definitely don't want to do that since it would affect the way it stamps. I don't know if you can tell, but I zigzag quite a bit around the letters so that the two pieces fit together in exactly one way only. That way if I wanted to use the stamp in its original form, I wouldn't have to worry that it's a little bit off. Now I can lay down the two pieces and center it vertically on the card, along with the other elements. At this point, my son's been watching me fiddle with the rolling pins for a while, and he jumps in with his idea.
Mommy, I think you should do it over him like this. Make it roll over him.
Aw, that's such a fun idea, but I think I'll go with my plan to stack them one behind the other. Since I'm not creating a longer pin like the one on the pajama top, I'm going to use a shorter, wider shadow. Before stamping, I'm finalizing the position of the elements and therefore the shadows. As you can see, I wanted to second generation stamp one of the shadows, but decided it was too faint. Stamping it again over top worked well. To get the sentiment perfectly straight, I used the lines on my grid mat and then picked up both pieces together with the acrylic block. There's too much of a gap between the comma and the scripted word, so I trimmed the photopolymer off the ends of both pieces so they sit closer together. I used glue dots to adhere the rolling pins together and place them on the stamped shadows. Then I go ahead and stamp the sentiment beneath that. Next, I can adhere the gingerbread man to the card. I actually didn't need that bottom piece of foam tape, so I removed it. Then I add glue dots to his legs since they sit on top of the rolling pins, which already have a bit of height. I just make sure that he's centered on the card before pressing down. Now it's time to adhere that top panel to the card base. I wanted it to have some height, but not necessarily with foam tape. Since the gingerbread man is already popped up, another layer would make it even bulkier to mail. I decide to use score tape, but I don't apply it close to the edges. This way it doesn't look completely flat, but in reality it is. When that's secure, I add some shimmer to the whites of the images using my Wink of Stella pen. Finally, I decided that the gingerbread man's buttons need to be red. I was able to salvage the mint enamel dots by carefully removing them and returning them to the original sheet. Since I didn't have red dots small enough, I decided to color white ones with the darkest of the red Copic markers that I used to color in the hat. The red buttons look so much better and the colors are balanced, with 3 areas of red and 3 areas of brown. This card looks simple enough, but I obviously struggled with it a bit. I do feel that I can mass produce this now. It's a fun, non-traditional card that's perfect for friends who tend to go a little nuts over the holidays. Please refer to the supply links below if you're interested in any of the products I used in this video. You can also visit my blog for stills and more information about my work. Thanks so much for watching.